resuming debate. The honourable member for Nickel Belt.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to inform you that I will be sharing my time with the Member of Parliament for Corora, Peterborough, Corora. I would like to begin by congratulating you on your reappointment as Deputy Chair of the House of Commons. I would also like to offer my sincere congratulations to my colleagues for their election. It is a great honour and privilege for me to take the floor of the House of Commons for the first time to represent the riding of Nickel Belt. Thank you. Thank you to the constituents of Nickel Belt and Greater Sudbury for their support. I would like to acknowledge the unconditional support that I have received from my wife, my children, my parents, my family, my friends, and the many volunteers who have supported me. Born and raised in Nickel Belt, I understand the challenges and opportunities of small rural communities, and I believe in the people of Nickel Belt, Northern Ontario. I come from a family of public servants. My father and my uncle both served as MPs in this distinguished House. As a business person and community advocate for people with disabilities, I have the passion for enhancing the quality of life in all my surroundings. Pour ma part, j'ai eu l'occasion depuis mon élection de sillonner les routes de la belle et grande circonscription de Nickel Belt au-delà de 30 000 kilomètres. Je suis fier des priorités énoncées dans le Discours du Trône par mon gouvernement. As Chair of the Northern Ontario Liberal Caucus, I look forward to working with my colleagues to address priorities and issues all over Northern Ontario. The caucus will be an active role in supporting and advocating government's agenda on many fronts. It has been a pleasure to have already met with the 6 mayors and over 20 councillors, and as well as the First Nations chiefs and many community and business leaders all across my riding. And a few of the outlining priorities have been identified. Infrastructure investment is much needed in Northern Ontario to attract private sector investment in the future. Small municipalities like West Nipissing, French River, Marc, Warren, Killarney, and organized townships like Gogama and Quartier struggle with funding and engineering reports and developing proposals. The Greater Sudbury Municipality has shovel-ready projects like the Maley Drive extension with provincial and municipal funding. And the 4-laning is important in the Municipal Road 35 from Azilda and Chelmsford, which I intend, and I'm looking forward to advocating for these projects. In addition, we also need to look at the 4-laning of Highway 144 to Timmins. We also need to look at our Trans-Canada Highway between North Bay and Thunder Bay. Also, some of the priorities and the social housing investment, Mr. Speaker. I've already met with several community and business partners who have shovel-ready projects, who are ready today to invest millions in our economy to create seniors, affordable, and social housing complexes in partnership with our local municipalities. These projects are in Chelmsford, Valley East, Cape Riol, and West Nipissing, ready to meet the needs of an aging population. Also, Mr. Speaker, broadband internet. We need to ensure that most Canadians have access to quality high-speed internet. Rural municipalities across Canada and Northern Ontario need to be part of an expanded fibre optic networks. The survival of rural Canada depends on infrastructure investment in high-speed fibre optics. I will work closely with the dedicated staff of FedNor and local development agencies. I was part of 12 Chamber of Commerces across Ontario, my previous employment. We need to strengthen the investments already made in Northern Ontario by FedNor. We need to look at expanding FedNor's role in broadband, innovation, research investment in order to position Northern Ontario and Canada as a world leader in the mining and supply services sector. The Canadian mining industry is a major employer. Approximately 380,000 people work across Canada. Mining is the largest private sector employer of Aboriginal people in Canada as a proportionate basis. Canada has a large and supply mining company globally that has more than 3,400 companies, enjoying the highest wages in all industrial sectors in Canada, with an average annual exceeding pay of $110,000. As an economic engine, stats in 2013, the mining contributed $54,000 billion to Canada's gross domestic product. The industry accounted nearly 20% of the value of Canadian goods and exports. Canada's value of mineral production is nearly $43 billion. My colleague, Member of Parliament for Sudbury, and I have visited the Centre of Excellence, SEMI, Living with Lakes, NORCAT, Morocco, Laurentian University, Collège Boréal, Cameron College. They are prime examples of endless possibilities when investing in research and innovative technologies. I've also visited with my colleague, Nipissing Timiskaming, visited the Blue Sky Agency to look at more broadband across our ridings in Northern Ontario. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to restoring the dialogue with our First Nations communities. This is an important matter on which I intend to be devoted, as I'm a proud citizen of the Mattawa, North Bay, Algonquin First Nation community, where Parliament is located. In the riding of Nickel Belt, I am developing a strong relationship with our First Nations chiefs in Attigmishing, Nishabek, Matagami, and Wenapete First Nations. I've also, Mr. Speaker, had the privilege of welcoming families of Syrian refugees in the Greater Sudbury Airport. I must say that the community support is incredible. Our Prime Minister has provided leadership. The families are sponsored by St. Andrew's Church, Capriol Valley East Catholic Refugee Group, the efforts of many other groups, such as the West Nipissing Neighbours with Border, continue to hope and welcoming more Syrian families. Also, in Northern Ontario, we need to reinstate a federal immigration office in Sudbury. I assure you, Mr. Speaker, Northern Ontario will embrace more immigration to support our communities and meet the staffing needs of the local business community. And let's not forget our veterans. Our government is committed to take care and offer them services that they deserve. I am proud to have 11 Royal Canadian Legion branches in Nickel Belt and Greater Sudbury. We need urgently to invest in our veterans and utilize this opportunity to ensure we deliver PTSD services that are world-class. Ce qui distingue la circonscription de Nickel Belt et du Grand Sudbury, c'est qu'elle est composée d'une multitude de petites localités, surtout rurales, tout à fait particulières, qui ont chacune leur charme et leur beauté, au-delà de 300 lacs, toute beauté. J'ai rencontré les citoyens et citoyennes de toutes les localités qui m'ont fait part de leurs préoccupations et priorités. Celles-ci ont été attendues et j'entends bien me consacrer sur les dossiers qui me tiennent à cœur, tels que l'industrie minière, la science et technologie, l'amélioration de l'Internet dans la communauté et les besoins d'infrastructures. Notre gouvernement entend appuyer CBC Radio-Canada. Cette société joue un rôle moteur dans le développement et l'épanouissement de nos communautés. Mon père a présenté une pétition à la Chambre ici de 20 000 noms en 1970 pour la création de CBC Radio-Canada Télévision à Sudbury, le nord de l'Ontario. Il faut poursuivre nos efforts et encourager la promotion, l'utilisation des langues officielles du Canada. La dualité linguistique est un atout pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Je suis fier du bon travail accompli par plusieurs organismes culturels et l'organisation Café Héritage de Chelmsford et le Conseil des arts du nord de l'Ontario, parmi tant d'autres, surtout en ce qui est des célébrations du 400 ans de la francophonie en Ontario. Voilà ce qui se rappelle qu'il est de notre responsabilité diriger une société sûre au sein de laquelle tous les artistes et toute leur diversité, leur savoir et leur détermination peuvent s'épanouir. I am a team player. I therefore understand the importance of knowing the needs, the dreams and aspirations and expectations of my colleagues and the constituents of Nickel Belt Greater Sudbury. I thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to working with all of you. Merci. Thank you, Annie.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to my colleague from Nickel Belt. As the Mayor of Hamilton, I dealt a lot with off-reserve Aboriginal questions. and housing, poverty, and those issues. And I'm wondering, Mr. Speaker, if there is a significant off-reserve component in Nickel Belt that needs to be addressed by the infrastructure program and so on.
Député de Nickel Belt.
Merci, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, the honourable member, for your question. And yes, in Nickel Belt, Greater Sudbury, we have, like I mentioned, the 3 First Nations communities, but we have invested, and also we have Collège Cambrian, Collège Boreal University, Laurentian University, that has attracted many of our Aboriginal students for higher education. We've also looked at encouraging the private sector to build upon the hiring of Aboriginal peoples, as I mentioned, in the mining sector. So I continue to work with the government, continue to work with our local partnerships and local partners to enhance the quality of life, the education of off-reserves Aboriginal people. Thank you.
Question commentaire. Questions and comments. The honourable member for Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I listened with interest to the honourable member's speech from Nickel Belt, and I know that employment is always a big concern in his riding. So I wonder what his reaction to his Minister of International Trade is, because the International Trade Minister and his party expressed lots of reservations about the Trans-Pacific Partnership during the election campaign, but now the minister's saying that the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a done deal and it's going to be endorsed by the government without any changes. And I know that members in my riding and certainly very concerned about the employment impacts and also the loss of food security and the potential attacks on supply management. So I wonder what the honourable member thinks about this apparent change in the attitude of his government on the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Member for Nickel Belt.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, the honourable member, for the question. This government, and I've worked many years with the private sector. I've had my own business. I've worked with the Chamber of Commerce's. It's very important. In Nickel Belt, Northern Ontario, we're a large exporter of goods and services all over the world. We are committed to looking at expanding the supply and mining sector to export more products and expertise across the world. So this is something that we are committed to, and we will work towards bringing this forward and working with the government of the House to make it better for the private sector. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Red Deer, Lacombe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I listened intently to my colleague's speech, and he talked eloquently about the value that mining jobs bring to his constituency. As the chair of Alberta Caucus, which would be the equivalent of what he's purporting to be with the Liberal Caucus in Northern Ontario, if he would agree that mining in all of its forms, whether it's surface mining for oil sands or bitumen in Northern Alberta, is every bit as economically valuable and important to all Canadians, not just First Nations Canadians, such as the Fort McKay Band, which is one of the wealthiest First Nations in this country because of their proximity to that fantastic development. And is he not a little bit concerned that there's not a single mention, nary a mention, in a 15-minute speech from the throne that could have been and might have been written by somebody in a grade 8 social class, that this issue wasn't brought up once? The Ring of Fire, which he is going to be the caucus chair for, not mentioned once in the economic opportunities therein. Can I count on him to be just as supportive for mining in my province in Alberta as I will be as a Conservative for all of these projects right across Canada, no matter where they happen to take place?
Honourable member for Nickel Belt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, the honourable member, for the question. Yes, when we look at the resource base, natural resources is very important, and I assure you, part of the caucus of Northern Ontario, my colleagues are working hard looking at the priorities of the mining industry, Northern Ontario, and I'm looking forward to working with my colleague in Alberta to develop more of a partnership and expanding the private sector role and looking at expediting that process. Thank you.